Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. Holy crap, we're into December already. Where is this year gone? But some things that are still dragging on is our House of Commons. They're still hanging in there in a bizarre filibuster state. And yes, unfortunately, I hate to report that Trudeau is still, as of right now, our prime minister. But we can always hope for the best and a Christmas gift at some point. Probably not this year, but one way or another, the status quo is going to change. All right, so yes, this is a live show. Get on there, use that comment, scroll, guys. I appreciate it. I see Tinker and Angry Canadian already checking in. Let's discuss things on there. Keep things civil, though. You know, we can have our fights on X. That's what it's for. Cory B. Morgan on there. If you really want to scrap it out, that's what I love doing there. But for showtime, we can just get those things out there and be civil to each other. The holiday season is coming. I got a guest I've been looking forward to coming on. Her name is Sheila Cunningham. She was at the UCP AGM, and there were thousands of people were there. I'm sure a few of the viewers were. And yes, she is a trans person, and she spoke calmly and rationally to the issue. That's something that issue just hasn't had. It hasn't had good discussion. It's had people screaming on each side. So let's talk. We don't have to agree on everything, but let's talk. And she's going to come on and talk to us about some of those things because, yes, conservatives can be trans. I know it sounds crazy to some folks, but it's true. All right. And as well, of course, there's going to be news check-ins and all the rest of that good stuff. So let's start with me talking about something a little different, holiday giving in a way. So let's talk about the left and the right in politics. I mean, on both sides, most agree, you know, because compassionate conservatives, that society has a moral obligation to help care for those who can't care for themselves, as opposed to those who won't care for themselves. The difference between the left and the right in the issue, though, tends to be on who they feel should be helping people out. I mean, the left tends to support forming government departments and policies and programs to deal with social needs, while the right tends to support charities and volunteers. Well, let's face it, the left has been winning that battle as the government's grown exponentially, while charitable donations and volunteerism are in sharp decline. The federal civil service is growing at 3 times the rate of population, while services, of course, anybody knows from the government, are getting worse than ever. But the losers in this trend, the biggest ones are the people who are in need and taxpayers. In 2012, over a quarter of Canadians filing tax returns had made charitable donations. By 2022, in just 10 years, that dropped to 1 in 6 people, and that decline is continuing. Volunteer-heavy charity groups from Meals on Wheels to Girl Guides have been scaling back their services as fewer people sign up to help out. And again, meanwhile, the size of Canada's government and civil service has been growing out of control. Every government department is bloated and inefficient, but no politicians have found the courage to make any cuts yet. But they're going to have to. Austerity is inevitable. Canada's government is on the brink of collapsing under its own weight, and politicians won't be able to kick the can of cuts down the road much longer. And when those cuts come, the pain's going to be very tough for people because we've let so many people become reliant on government services. As slow and as inept as Canada's government is now the only thing separating a lot of people from actual homelessness and starvation. I can't think of any institution worse to be dependent on than the bloody government if you're in that condition. There have been several factors contributing to this mess. I mean, some of it's just been sloth on the part of voters. They vote for whoever promises the most goodies, whoever will blow the most smoke up their butt, and whoever promises to take the most responsibility, social responsibility, off their hands. It's easier to think the government will fix it than to think maybe you should be the one fixing things, right? So let's just hand it off to them. Unfortunately, governments rarely solve problems. They just expand and create new ones. Now we've got tough economic times contributing to the drops in charitable donations, and it's a self-perpetuating problem. As Canada's bloated, parasitic bureaucracy grows, productivity drops, the dollar loses value, GDP per capita shrinks, and taxes rise. Then fewer people can afford to donate to charities, so the government expands to cover the void and drives more people into poverty, thus needing more government aid. More recently, of course, the postal strike. They've hit charities hard. Charities used to raise a lot of funds through mailouts and getting checks. The prime time for fundraising is right now, and it's during the Christmas season, and charities are having a tough time while postal workers try to fight against progress. Everybody's losing as postal workers are striking themselves into obsolescence, but it's also striking charities out of business. The COVID lockdowns, they decimated volunteer-based organizations as the state made it illegal for people to gather to help each other out. Once the habit of volunteering has been broken, it's hard to get back into the swing of things. Again, as people got used to staying at home and began embracing the attitude of, well, government will take care of everything. We need to return to community-based care for each other, guys. Charities, volunteer organizations, and a sense of personal responsibility. That's the hard one. For social ills, it has to return. Unfortunately, things are going to have to get worse before they get better. I know charities are far from perfect. I mean, we can't forget the We charity. Many also have become top-heavy with administration, and some are outright corrupt. But for the most part, they did better work for people in need than any government program ever could. And they will be needed more than ever soon. A good competitive charity environment helps weed out the bad ones. People are facing a tough Christmas this year. I know our pockets aren't as full as they used to be, but we should be seeking ways to dig a little deeper and try and help our fellow citizens through some of the better charities, or maybe dedicating some time with the local organizations. It's satisfying, it's good for the community, and it'll help far more people than the government ever will. Look, we're in a rut right now. We will dig ourselves out, but it's going to take some time. We can shorten that time frame, though, as we start changing our habits now. We can shrink the government, remind ourselves it's the people, not governments, that create a prosperous, cohesive society. So let's take back our role from the government, guys, and we can start with charities and volunteering. All right, enough of my Christmas ranting and feel-good sort of things. You know, it's me. I'm all fuzzy in that way when it gets near the holiday season. Let's check in with the news with Dave Naylor and see what else is going on in the big bad world. How's it going, Dave?
It's going well, Cory. Glad to see you remembered your microphone this week.
I did. I'm glad people can hear me this week.
Yeah. So you've spent a lot of your career in the States, working there and traveling. What do you think about Canada becoming the 51st state?
Well, it's been an interesting thing coming up. We haven't heard for quite a while, but I got a feeling we would still be a small fish in a bigger pond. I mean, we might be better off than we are under old Trudeau, but I don't know if that's going to be necessarily a solution to our problems.
No, I've had fun this morning putting together all the different memes of Trump and what it, with him planting the flag.
Oh, he's just...
We've got him in a Mountie uniform riding a horse. So
yeah.
It's been good fun this morning. Our lead story right now, Cory, is the New York Times came up and did a big feature on our vacuous Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly. And they've declared her the top contender to replace Justin Trudeau when he finally gets booted. So all I can say is if she's the best the Liberals have, Tories could be in power for generations.
Oh, G.I. Jolie. I mean, she could be up there.
And Chrystia Freeland has released a book that I may get you for Christmas.
Oh,
so she's obviously going to be a contender. You're a big Swiftie, right? Big concerts in Vancouver this week to end the tour.
And you know, tickets.
Yeah. Well, you know who's got tickets, and you paid for them or helped pay for them, is Liberal Cabinet Minister Harjit Sajjan. He's going with his family on taxpayer tickets that were purchased. Obviously on our dime. So there's some outrage over that. Our West Coast Bureau Chief, Jared Yager, he's all over this Swift concert. He's got a story up there on, how hotels are jacking up their prices. It's price gouging, basically. They're charging 5 or 6 times their regular room rate. So if you haven't got accommodation yet, Cory, be prepared to pay. And he's currently in line at the at BC Place, where they've got a place set up for buying Swift merchandise. So there's literally hundreds of teenage girls in line, going to blow their entire year's allowance on getting a Taylor Swift hoodie. And Jared's got the assignment of talking to them and seeing what they're so excited about. Southwest Airlines in the States has joined the party and have canceled all their DEI programs. Abbotsford police today made an arrest of a drunk driver early this morning. Scary thing is he was on his way to start his job as a semi-driver, and he was pissed as a newt, at 6 a.m. So good thing they got him off the street.
Yes.
And speaking of elections, all that stuff about delaying the election until the following week, until all those NDP people in sync and lock in their pensions, apparently that's now off the table. So what I think that means is we could have a snap election sooner than later, if I'm reading it right. So that's what we've got now. Currently, Manhattan is almost in a state of lockdown where the head of the biggest health insurance company in the United States was assassinated as he walked outside a high-rise this morning, and there is a massive manhunt for that killer on the go as we speak. And our Jennifer Hodgson will have a story up there as soon as I'm out of here.
Great. Well, no shortage of things to cover today, as usual. So
no, it's another busy day in the newsroom.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you filling us in on it, Dave. I'll let you get back in there to sort through all that stuff and make sure we don't miss anything else Taylor Swift related.
We got it covered, man. We got it covered.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor, covering. As you can see, lots and lots going on, guys. The stories are just piling up out there, and we're getting them out there. If you look on the site, it is just prolific. We're one of the most highly covered news sites in Western Canada now. So the reason we're doing it, the reason we can, is where I start to talk about paying the bills, guys, is through subscribers. It's $9.99 a month. $100 for a year, just like an old newspaper subscription, guys. Well worth it. And it keeps us going, keeps those reporters out there. As I said, Jared is out there covering Taylor Swift stuff. I mean, come on, we can't get a guy to suffer through all that without paying him at least a little bit. And we got, Chris Oldcorn out in Saskatchewan. We got Jen here in Calgary. We got all sorts of people, columns. Get on there, westernstandard.news/subscription. Take one out. If you subscribed already, thank you very much. We do appreciate it. It keeps us rolling. It's interesting. It is with what Dave was talking about, and I didn't see that coming. I didn't really anticipate it with the government changing the date, for a potential election coming along. And as Dave said, I got a feeling we're going to head into a spring election. I could see where their logic is going to come from now. They'll fall on a budget. They'll put out a budget just full of handouts, goodies, promises they know they'll never be able to keep. And they'll go down on a confidence vote on that. And they'll say, you see, the Conservatives and everybody else are just so evil. They wouldn't accept this fantastic budget. So we've got to go to the Canadians and get their permission to bring it in. And I would hope that they get slaughtered in the elections. That's what is due to happen. They've just been in too long. I mean, it is saying a lot about the pool that the Liberals have to draw from when Melanie Joly is really considered the top contender, coming in for the next job. Again, she's just not the brightest light on the string there, guys. I mean, she's kind of proven that over the last few years. But you got to remember, smart politicians can read the writing on the wall. Whoever the next Liberal leader is going to be is probably going to be a placeholder. And sure, you might even, if Trudeau resigned before the election, you could even become the prime minister for a very short time. But who remembers those names? Stefan Dion, Michael Ignatieff, they come and go. The smart ones are going to hold off, let somebody else take one for the team, and they're going to make their go for it in another electoral cycle. But again, with them putting off that change that was going to put the election farther into October next year, the only reason I can see them doing that is they're pretty confident they're going to go before then. Spring's a good time to go on election. People are in a better mood. They're feeling more positive. I mean, these are all the things you actually have to take into consideration. And an election is a thing about feelings sometimes. And, the winter is melting. Trudeau's handing money out to everybody. Boy, everybody got $250 of their own money back in April. They might be in a less grouchy mood rather than, say, a fall election when the leaves have fallen, the first snowfall is hit, and you're looking for the days getting shorter and darker. I'll lay my money now. People, I don't have any money. I'll lay my bet that's worth nothing on this show right now, though. I say we're going to see an election in April this year. It's going to come. And as for the outcome, well, I suspect a strong Conservative majority, but who knows? Politics are a weird, bloody creature. But all the same, I think we're going to be in for it this next year, which is about time. For a minority government, I guess credit for where it's due for the maneuvering and the political play. The average minority government in Canada actually only lasts 18 months. So the Trudeau government went beyond the average by a long shot. And to make it almost a full term as a minority is exceptional. Not exceptionally good for us, but it's just exceptional as far as politics go. All right, let's get back a little closer to Alberta with politics. And again, as I said, I've been looking forward to this. So there was a lot of discussion. Trans issues have been big and discussed a lot, of course, in general. And some policies went before the UCP AGM. And, it was an amazing AGM. 6,000 people came out. There were thousands of people in the audience voting yes or no on policy proposals. And I mean, I tell you, it's tough. It's scary. It's scary for public speaking to get up in front of 30 people. It's really scary to get up in front of a few thousand people. And then to get up in front of a few thousand people where consistently they tended to vote against what you proposed as a policy, but still being polite about it, taking it and continuing to get up and make your case. That takes some courage. And I really admired that. And that's what Sheila Cunningham was doing at the AGM. She was speaking to those issues, got her perspective out there, and then came by the broadcast booth quickly and offered to come on and chat about these things some more. And I think it's important that we chat about it. We get too much of the, I think, hysterics from the activists on one side, and from some of the people who get a little too upset on the Conservative side as well. And we're not going to solve anything until we talk. So she's come on this week, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, and welcome to the show, Sheila.
Thanks, Cory. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are a member of the United Conservative Party, an active one. You came out to the AGM. I mean, that alone is a commitment. I mean, it's not cheap to get to those things and to take the time and all that as well. I guess I'll just start from the beginning, though. What did you feel you were there to accomplish, and do you think you accomplished it?
Well, I guess part of why I'm involved at all is to show that not everybody that's trans is hard on the political left. You can be in the conservative side, and that's fine. But there's so few people that are there, and part of getting involved and going to events was to see how many other trans people are there. Very few. There are very few that are evident in what they look like. But people have been really respectful. Lots of people, even regardless of if they agree with me or like me or whatever, a lot of people ignore me. I ignore them. A lot of people have been really accepting and celebratory, even come up to me and go, even MLAs and cabinet ministers come up and go, thank you so much for being here, for showing there's another side to the story. And thank you for speaking up. And so to hear those things, to know that they're just simply being there and speaking, it makes a difference to that many people, has really been worthwhile.
Well, great. Yeah, and it breaks the ice. I mean, it's not just a time when you're at the microphone up front speaking to the whole room, but you're there. I mean, those are social events. Everybody's getting together, exchanging ideas. Now, you spoke to policy proposals. You made your recommendations. I don't believe any of them went the way you recommended, but you still did it respectfully. But do you still feel heartened about how things went that day?
Oh yes, because the what happens is the policies that pass become advice to the government. And so by speaking about, how is the government might implement it, or what other issues might there be around it, that goes into the hopper of the things that the government considers as they goes from being party policy to potentially government policy. And often the concepts that come from the party, they're rooted in something, and there's a good concept there. But sometimes the administration of the concept, how to actually do it, isn't going to fit with how all the various mechanisms of government work. So just trying to put those pieces in there, both for members to hear, because they might hear next year that, well, the government couldn't do certain things because of, and like in an accountability session, but also then for the government to then that becomes part of the whole process.
So let's talk, I guess, about some of the sticking points. Like I have as I mean, I tend to consider myself a classical liberal libertarian. As far as people, if they're grown, want to do their own thing, cool, go, be happy, do what you will. But we start to get some of the difficulties when we get policy or when we get interaction. And like one that becomes complicated is sports. And that the legislation just came through that recently. I think that's one of the ones where, I mean, we've got physiological realities. There's a difference between people biologically male and biologically female. And, as much as we want to accommodate, it has really led to some serious problems, particularly in contact sports, but also things like swimming and areas such as that. Do you think the government's bill to address that was good?
Well, that's a good segue into the difference between biological sex and gender, because both of them include the terms male and female. And so biological sex, the vast majority of people are either biologically male or biologically female. There's a few that are intersex but that's not the focus of today. But those basically, that's really the presence or absence of testosterone as people grow, and that really makes a big difference in who is the most explosive in their starts and the faster runner and the bigger muscles. Now, gender also includes male or female, but that's really who people believe they are inside, how they feel in their soul. And so many people look at those two, the term male and female, as interchangeable between there. But like I would say, I'm biological male, but my gender would be female. And so that fits under trans. And so in sports, to have the biological males on one side and the biological females on the other, that matches from strength and speed. And the gender piece, that's more of a social and who socializes together. But you don't need to socialize together in competition on a sport, because that's the restrictions around competition. And the greatest competition is the tryouts. And if you suck during your competitive tryout, you get cut. And that's not fair either. So you need to have fairness in there as well.
Yeah. So, but I mean, in those cases, if a person is, particularly if they transition later, then their body is developed into a male position, do you feel that they should compete directly with people who are, I guess, straight to female? Again, in the swimming, I mean, we saw some exceptional or weightlifting, things like that. There's just such a tremendous advantage given it makes it difficult.
Oh, yes. I mean, for me, a good example, a good Alberta example is basketball. Go watch your local like high school girls or college, watch the girls play and then watch the boys play, and see just what that difference in height and elevation, speed. They play a very different game because their physical abilities are different. And so, I'm fine with there's a difference of safety and a difference of fairness, and I'm fine with the restrictions that they're proposing for competitive sport.
Yeah, and we can work hopefully to accommodate. I mean, we want as many kids to participate in sports if they want to as possible and have fun. And that's part of the problem is it becomes not fun if you get somebody with unfair advantages going on. So, maybe open categories or some sports where it doesn't make a difference, things like that. But I mean, that's where we need the reasonable discussion to happen, not some of the crazed, I guess, we've had on both sides. So a lot of it, I guess, where we get a lot of sticking points lately with people too is when it comes to age, though, and youth. And I want to ask kind of in a little way, because I don't understand, I have to admit it. With yourself, anyways, when did you feel or know you were trans, or you wanted, to identify as a different gender? When did that become clear to you?
Well, even as a teenager, I knew it was different. But at that time, the letter of the 2S, LGBTQ, it didn't even get to the B. So it was a very short alphabet. It was before the internet. So I knew it was different, but I thought every teenager thought they were different. So I didn't really have any sense it was related to femininity till I was 18. But it was decades later before I actually accepted it myself. And then another decade before I came out publicly. So it's been, I knew it was different for a long time, but it really, as a teenager, it was never there. I just knew it was different. And teenagerdom is not an easy time for many people for a variety of reasons.
No, it's not for most. And that's where we get the concerns, I guess, is when somebody might do something irreversible and perhaps it was the wrong choice in a confusing time. That's where we start worrying. Like a lot of things come out anecdotal. I'll offer one. We have a family friend, their daughter decided she's male. So, okay, went with the name change, so on, and the whole works. And a few years later determined, no, you know what, I'm female, and went back. Okay, no harm, no foul, moved ahead. That's all good. But had there been any medical intervention, whether puberty blockers or even worse, top surgery or something, there would have been some very serious regret on somebody who was just going through the usual pubescent confusion, identity. I mean, you're overloaded with hormones, you got social challenge, you got everything happening. It's just, we're talking about entrusting people to make some very big life-altering decisions during what's probably the worst few years for us to make good long-term decisions in our whole lives.
Yes, and so the youth part is challenging for that reason. And once someone goes through, like I did, through teenagerdom, testosterone, your hands don't get smaller. Your head, if you have broad shoulders, they stay. So some changes through puberty are irreversible. But if you go through medical treatment during that time, you may also end up, some of the treatments, you might end up infertile and unable to have kids. And that was actually one of the things the Premier identified when announcing these bills in the press conference, why coming forward, the concern that the state, so the province, taking away those rights of minors by treating them, that could potentially result in a class action lawsuit in the future and protecting future taxpayers from that. And I think, well, okay, so there's a financial piece to it that I think has not been much discussed.
No, I mean, we've got sued very heavily, though it was the purposeful sterilization of people. It was, a terrible period of history in eugenics with people they believe were mentally handicapped, and they would sterilize them. Turned out some weren't even what we would consider mentally handicapped. Now, it was terrible, terrible policy, and then the lawsuits cost a lot. But of course, the moral issue is more important and more sticky than the money one. The money's important. And it would just be horrific to think of somebody who had something irreversible happen or later on, and that regardless of the money settlement, they can't have children, or they didn't develop the way they should have, or there might be other long-term consequences with the so much more use of puberty blockers. I mean, I just don't think it's unreasonable to step on the brakes a little with this.
No, and I think that's fine. I'm looking forward to, the legislation, those three pieces all passed yesterday through third reading in the legislature. The one on the health part for the youth. I mean, I look at gender dysphoria often. You can look at it in three categories. So that's where your gender does not match your biological sex. That's gender dysphoria. And so if you've got mild, moderate, or severe is three categories. If you've got mild or moderate, you can probably navigate that as a teenager with your support from your parents until you're an adult and can make your own decisions. The ones that are severe, those are a tougher case, So, I mean, there are kids out there that they're suicidal at ages younger than what's have been passed in the legislation. And so how do we protect them? How do we treat them during those years? And so there's potential, just what the legislation doesn't go into that detail, but because there's orders and regulations yet to come, I'm hopeful that that will be addressed, because it's clear on all three bills, the government has not invoked a notwithstanding clause. So they are looking at these as being reasonable restrictions on the rights of people. And so the exact details of how they'll do it aren't clear to me today, but they would generally come in the next steps anyway. So I'll continue to watch for that. But that's a piece I'm continuing to look for. How are I mean, we want I want all those kids to become tax-paying adults when they grow up, and whatever their gender, sexuality, whatever it is. And it's not easy to get them all there. I'm a parent of 3 adult kids. Sometimes teenagering was hard.
Well, I mean, it's a work in progress. That's what I appreciate with your patients too. Some of the difference, as I said, you got up, you spoke, I think you made an impact in the room. If you hadn't, I wouldn't have called you to come on the show.
Right.
But all the same, you didn't win the day policy wise. But the other thing that was impact, you didn't turn on your heel and give everybody the finger and say to hell with all of you and then stomp out the door. You realize this is a process and back and forth. And we get things wrong, we get things right. I mean, I remember in my youth, we wouldn't even have thought that there would be marriage between same-sex couples. It wasn't even a discussion. It couldn't even be a consideration. And now it's widely accepted. And I don't think, despite what some people claimed at that time too, opening things up, legalizing same-sex marriage, things like that, didn't create more gay people. It just allowed them to have a better life for themselves where they're at. I mean, I think in some sense, it's just me guessing. There's a bit of a trans trend going on with some kids that kind of goes back and forth, but true gender dysphoria isn't going to be expanded because of more trans friendly, I guess, policies.
No, trans-friendly policies won't expand up. Yeah, some have talked about kind of a trans trend. There's more, and some have really expressed concern about the number of young women that are identifying as trans, particularly if there's a group of them. And like there's a group in a small social group, and all of a sudden there's several of them that are trans in a statistically unlikely manner. Yeah. And so there have been some people say, oh, someone must be recruiting them or trying to do something. I'm like, well, maybe all these young, and based on what I had one person tell me, one adult tell me, they said what their kid told them was, it's not so much, this was a girl going to a boy, not so much that they're a boy, but there's far more than a girl. And so perhaps these girls are seeing, one theory I have is these girls are seeing what sexism exists in society. And they're looking at that and going, you know what, for generations ago, they banded together to get the vote, and then later on to get the rights to earn their own paycheck and not have that to be part of their husband. And now they're going, oh, heck with that. I'm going to go play for the other team. That's a possibility, right? Well, so we shouldn't discount that as a plot, but it's worth looking into. Why is that happening? And there's even been bans on funding things research-wise by the feds if it doesn't match their program, everything trans is just fine. So
yeah, well, and that's what we need. Again, just some rational, calm discussions. Is things come, they go. We get things right, we get things wrong. I'll kind of just close off though. I mean, as a conservative, as a person who likes to see participatory democracy, I loved that AGM just in the fact that there were so many people there. I'm not a member, but it's certainly a party I prefer. And we've got to broaden our base if we want small government, if we want government out of our faces, if we want less taxes, if we want business-friendly things, all those conservative values. And I appreciate you getting out and reminding other conservatives, hey, don't exclude other conservatives. This is how we win, guys. We get together. Don't let them divide us. The Liberals love it when we fight with each other. And I appreciate you showing that you can be trans and conservative.
Well, that's a really good point, Cory, is that, I mean, there's a lot of estimates about the percentage of the LGBT population in society, and often they're around 10%. Okay, but 10% could swing an election. And then that 10%, they tend to have a number of people that love them. And so all of a sudden you're up more than 10%, you're into 20 or 30%. And if that number of people is looking at, they're making their decisions, part of the decisions that they vote is based on how that group is being treated, that starts to be something that I think all parties should be interested in even how they're extending out to them, and in either directly in policy or indirectly, so those groups can see themselves in that party's future.
Absolutely. I mean, it's better politics, and it's just better as being people. Come on, we can sit in the same room even if we don't agree. We've all got to get better at that. Hey, it takes practice. It takes self-control sometimes, but it's how we get better policy in a better place in the end. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on to talk to us today, and the time you took at the AGM. I'm glad you're still active and going at things. I'm certain we'll see you at an event sometime soon in the future.
Thank you so much, Cory, and anytime you want me back, let me know.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Sheila. So that was Sheila Cunningham. And as I said, you see there, a good conversation. You don't have to agree with everything Sheila said or I said. I'm certain Sheila and I don't agree on everything with these things. It is a very sensitive, big issue, as I will fully admit. And I'm a blowhard. I talk on issues. I give my opinions. There's a lot of things I just don't understand. I had it pretty easy in a lot of ways through puberty. I still went through my insecurities and my social challenges and everything else. But one thing, at least, I was always straight. I knew that. The only was I knew I liked the girls. I wasn't caught with that self-doubt and the other stuff that a lot of kids had to deal with at that time if they were gay or it turns out trans, things like that. So the only way I can learn about these things is talking to others who went through it. And we can get better with these things. And we're getting better. We're moving along there. Again, I worry about, yes, some of the activists are nuts, but that happens in every area we're at. We've got religious activists who are nuts. We've got socialist activists who are nuts. We've got all kinds. God knows, let's talk about the Gazans, and the Palestine movement. But there's a lot of rational people in the middle. And I think often they were afraid to come out and speak, afraid to participate. I know, I'll offer another anecdote. This is where I kind of learned just how bad things were for some people. This is way back when the Alberta Alliance, we're going to get some Alberta history here. Alberta Alliance Party was the party, and my wife Jane and I were on the board with that. We had a solid, strict policy opposing gay marriage. And my wife Jane actually put forth that and started the battle to get rid of that policy. It was already legalized anyways. And that's the party that eventually morphed into the Wild Rose Party and then the UCP. And we got rid of that policy, but it was a battle. And who cares? I mean, most people could say that now, but it was a serious battle at that time. We went for supper with another couple. We were invited. This was even before we tried to change the policy. But we were eating a meal with a couple of people we thought were good friends and everything. And I was, we were talking politics. That's what we do. And I pitched, I just said, I wasn't even talking about the gay marriage. I was just saying, we've got to change and broaden and reach out to the LGBTQ. As Sheila said earlier, I don't think we had quite as many letters back at that time. It was more simple, but bring them in, because there's business owners, there's all sorts of people out there who are just as frustrated with these bad governments as anybody else. We would be better for it to bring them in. They want to be conservatives, but we're just not welcoming. Well, you would have thought I lobbed a turd into the punch bowl. Holy cow, did the room get cold and quiet. Our meal was ruined. We went through it in a weird, perfunctional sort of way. And literally, we never ended up talking again. I never heard from them ever again. Turns out they were highly, highly religious, which is fine, but to the point where they couldn't even withstand discussing welcoming gay people in the party. Like, wow. So how does that feel if you were a person of the LGBTQ community and you get a reception like that? Of course, you're not going to go back there, even if you are concerned about the taxes, the regulations, and all of those conservative issues. Who wants to be in a room that's that hostile to you? But rooms like that are so much more rare now. It's so much better now than it was then. And there's still a ways to go. And we can overshoot the boundary. You can be hyper tolerant. Again, we can get to the point of allowing the activists to get too far. I'm horrified when I heard that there's minors who have had top surgery. We're talking about girls who have had their breasts removed before turning 18. I just hope and pray then, well, I'm not much of a prayer sort of guy, but either way, I hope that every one of those surgeries were people who were really, really confident that's what they wanted to do. And certainly you can end up getting, breast augmentation later to try and repair that. But boy, these are irreversible ideas. And I got a feeling we push too far when we're getting kids and doing something like that to them. They can hang on till they're 18. I know when you're 16, 17, 18, 19 feels like it's 100 years from now. But once we start getting middle-aged, we realize how fast that little roll of toilet paper life is running. It'll speed up. Don't worry, you'll get there, guys. Hang on. You can change how you dress. You can change your identity. You can do all sorts of stuff. just maybe hang on before you get to the point of surgical intervention. All right, let's talk about some of the other stuff, though, because boy, what a week it's been. Crazy old Donald Trump, yes, that mad Cheeto in the South, is really establishing himself, though, as dominant in North America. I mean, what we are seeing is a social media pissing match, and he is taking his thumb on Trudeau and grinding him down. He is making him dance, and it's not that shocking because Trudeau is a terribly weak leader. Now, I kind of enjoy watching this as a social media watcher, as a conservative, as a guy who really doesn't like Trudeau, but I do fear for what kind of policy this is going to lead to. You know, Trudeau, went down to Mar-a-Lago, which I still think was one of the few bright moves on Trudeau's part. I mean, when you've got an incoming president, it doesn't matter what you think of him, how much you like him. If he's threatening tariffs that are going to, and if those 25% tariffs come through, they are going to hurt Canada a lot, then you'd better react, get down there and start talking with him. It doesn't matter whether you like him or not. Let's get chatting. Now, unfortunately, I don't think, though, Trudeau's presence down there helped necessarily. I think it was the right move. But again, you're taking a weak man and sticking him next to a type A man who's got a big chip on his orange shoulder, who really wants to grind it back to Trudeau. And that's where you're getting mockery. When you're getting talk, I mean, this is between leaders of countries. I mean, some people are kind of shrugging it off. Oh, it's just Trump joking around. Leaders don't joke like that about saying, we can make you the 51st state. Maybe you'll be a governor. Guys, that is taking a leak on his leg, and dominance is what he did. And from the other reports from that, Trudeau just kind of awkwardly giggled and let it go because he didn't know what to do, because Trudeau is not a sharp, strong man. And in times like this, that's what we need. And I shouldn't say man necessarily. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man. If you want to see strength, look at Danielle Smith. Look what she's been doing. She's been proactive. She's been joining groups of governors on the south side of the border. She's going to Trump's inauguration. That was prior to the threat of these, trade sanctions that we're going to get coming up. I'll call them sanctions if you're talking about tariffs that big. And if anything, she's got a good case to make. I kind of said that in my column the other week. Because if 25% tariffs hit Canadian oil and gas products, that's going to hurt Americans a lot. Their price at the pump is going to go up immediately. Their price to heat their homes is going to go up immediately. And that's not going to bode well for Trump. He's got to try and still maintain, strength for the midterms in 2 years from now. If he can find an out, if there's going to be anything he's going to carve out of the tariffs, it'll be oil and gas. And with Premier Smith providing him that escape route for that, Alberta might weather the Trump storm a heck of a lot better than the rest of the country will. And again, I got a feeling that'll lead to other unity challenges, because when that happens, usually then the country tries to steal Alberta's resources. But that's a whole separate rabbit hole to go down. But at least he's being proactive and smart about it. Unfortunately, on the federal front, we've got a president coming in who's got, the Senate, he's got Congress, he's got the Supreme Court, and he's got his own house. He's the most powerful president we've seen in a generation, and he's trolling us. He's posting pictures of him saying, "Oh, Canada," and looking over the mountains with a flag. He's got no respect for the leadership of this country. And you can get upset with him all you like. That's fine, I do. But he's there. He's going to be there for a while, and we have to deal with it. And we aren't well equipped to. So it's kind of scary looking at what's going on. Great to be a political watcher, not so good to be a Canadian who's worried about their economic outlook in a country that's already hurting. Another thing out of Trump, though, this is going to be interesting to see coming. And this is something the world really needed to see, I think, particularly from the United States. He has said outright, and he said it again, that the hostages in Gaza have to be freed by the time he's sworn in. And this is his quote: "Those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America." And of course, I've seen the leftist media pissing themselves over it. Oh my God. And people saying Gazans are afraid. Well, they should be. They should be. It's about time. They've tried for over a year with these terrorist, rapist, murderous scumbags to try and negotiate, to try ceasefires, to try to get the hostages released, and they still have them. Let's quit pretending the average Gazan citizens don't know where they are, because they do. You don't have a neighbor building tunnels, launching rockets, and holding somebody hostage for a year without knowing it. They're supporting Hamas. They're still supporting Hamas. And no, I don't think bombing them is going to make them support Hamas less, but it might get the bloody hostages loose, because there's no more pussyfooting with these guys. This is horrific. And I tell you what, when you've got a man like Trump saying he's going to come in and deal with this, you guys had better bloody be scared. Because whatever the thing is with Trump, he does follow through with what he says he's going to do. That's a rare trait among politicians. You might not like what he's going to do, but he's offering a pretty good warning. You guys are on notice. You got a little more than a month. I suspect a lot of those hostages are no longer alive, but there should be a few. They've been finding the corpses of ones, because of course these scumbags kill them the second it looks like they're going to be overrun by the IDF. But there's still some that could be rescued. And it should be, Hamas has to lose this. Has to lose. This has to set an example to the world. This sort of approach cannot win. You can't raid a music festival and murder people like that. You can't kidnap people like that, rape people like that, and then get what you wanted out of it. You can't. You have to lose and lose dearly. And unfortunately, yes, the citizens of Gaza, the Palestinians, are suffering dearly because of it. But let's not pretend that they weren't the ones who put them up there in the first place. You got to remember, Gaza was fully under Israel's control 20 years ago. Israel gave it back to them. And what did they do? Did they build up industries? Did they come up with, good schools and education for their people? No, they oppressed their women, dug tunnels, built rockets, and got ready to try and kill all the Jews again. Sorry, guys, you brought that on yourselves. And Trump now is going to bring it to an end. It might be an ugly, bloody end. I don't know any other kind of end that can come over there. But it gives me a little bit of optimism with that. Now let's talk about stupid vows from leaders. And yeah, we'll start with the stupidest leader we got, Justin Trudeau. I just saw this on X before I came to do the show. He vowed to give resources to cities, and this is his terms, to crack down on Airbnbs to reduce the rental crisis. Really? As I responded on X, is he going to crack down on Uber so that we have more rental cars available? You moron. This isn't going to make a difference. Cracking down on homes that have secondary suites, things like that, that's not the root of the problem. The problem is on a number of levels. We've been, of course, had out of control immigration going for a long time, which has spiked demand for housing, and the prices have gone up and the availability's gone down. We've been taxed half to death. We can't afford much more. And we're regulated terribly, so we can't build more supply. And this dingbat wants to come in and increase regulations to make it even less affordable to have rental properties, even on a short-term level. Guess what happens? You get less supply. But that's what he vowed. Oh boy, that'll help things out, won't it? At least Trump is vowing something doable and something that's going to benefit us. But some of the usual barking seals are applauding it. Cities that have been mismanaged, not zoning correctly, not allowing proper growth, cities that are choking the creation of more housing. Oh, it must be Airbnb that's doing it. That's next to nothing for it. The only ones who are going to benefit from that, of course, are hotels, which are already charging a bloody fortune. Dave mentioned that recently anyways. I'm in Vancouver. Try and get a room for the Taylor Swift concert within Vancouver during that period. It's going through the roof. Airbnbs on hotels. But hey, again, it's supply and demand. All the way back in 88. Yeah, I'm dating myself. I was in Banff back then. But Calgary, all of those areas, yeah, if you wanted to get a room during the Olympics out here, you were going to pay a pretty price for it. And you knew that years in advance. So, hey, you want to get a good hotel rate, don't book into a city while Taylor Swift is there, right? You're just asking for it. I'm not a fan. I'm an 80s heavy metal guy. I once in a while like to show my old mullet pictures from back then. Not my style of music. But you know what? If people want to go out and enjoy that, go to town. Good on them. Have fun. Do your thing. There's worse things that young girls could be doing with themselves than going to a Taylor Swift concert if their parents are sponsoring it. The problem that came about the other week, of course, is one of the parents sponsoring it was Justin Trudeau with his daughter, which again, hey, good for you. Go out with your daughter. That's fine. But dancing around like a twit while Montreal's burning and, he could have booked a box. He could have stayed quietly in the background, but that's not Trudeau. He has to be front and center. He has to do bracelet exchanges. It did a disservice to the other people who are attending that, and it rubbed people's noses into it when he's saying, hey, here's a 5% break on jigsaw puzzles and beer. See, I've saved Christmas for you. Now I'm going to spend thousands of dollars to take my daughter to a concert that you couldn't dream of ever taking your children to. I don't mind rich people spending big money on things. That's the way it goes. That's okay. Envy's a bad thing to have. But there is conspicuous consumption, and it depends on where you are and what you're doing. If you're Jagmeet Singh, who's claiming to be a socialist, who's claiming to talk for the working man, you don't get yourself caught on pictures getting into a Maserati, which is exactly what he did. Oh, Jagmeet, your car is worth more than what your party has in the bank. Good work. That really helped show. And as I said online, yes, he's a Maserati Marxist. Politics, guys, you got to be a little more smart about it. You know, get into your modest vehicle, get driven around the block to a parking lot, and then get into your Maserati, whatever. But you're going to get that response. If you're not hiding, if you're not claiming to be a socialist or a Marxist, then get into the expensive vehicle. But if you're going to play the role, guys, you got to walk the walk. So Trudeau, yeah, he undid everything he did with his GST holiday and all of that sort of crap when he was shown prancing around at the Taylor Swift concert, rubbing everybody else's nose into the kind of activities that the rich get to do, whilst the commoners get 5% off at McDonald's for 2 months. All right, well, that's all the piss and moan and rant and raving I got for this week, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. There's more news to cover, but there's just only so much time in the hour. Make sure to subscribe and all those good things, like, share the links, and tune in. We're going to have the pipeline coming on a little later tonight. And of course, Nigel does those fantastic episodes of Hannaford. And come back in 1 week's time, I'm going to have Jay Hill on. He's a political veteran, and we're going to talk Parliament and what sort of mess we've got going on in there. What do we got to look forward to in the next federal year? So be sure to come in Wednesday, same time next week, and we'll do it all again. Thanks, guys. See you then.